staying with us now. As promised, the news in detail. Let's begin with our top story coming out of the U.S. Congress, which has expressed concern over India's continuing restrictions in occupied Kashmir. In a meeting of the U.S. Congress Foreign Affairs Subcommittee, Assistant Secretary of State Alice Wells called for the rights of Kashmiris to be respected. The Congressional Committee criticized India's curfew, communications blackout, and mass arrests in occupied Kashmir. It said Kashmiris have a right to live in dignity and to participate fully in society and governance. The committee also renewed U.S. President Donald Trump's offer to mediate the Kashmir issue if both Pakistan and India agree. Now, Indian occupation forces have martyred 3 Kashmiri youth in the Pulwama district. Troops martyred the youth during a search and cordon operation in the district's Rajpura area. The killings took place the day a delegation of foreign diplomats and journalists visited the line of control in Azad Kashmir. The curfew imposed by India in the occupied valley is now 80 days old. New Delhi has also enforced a communications blackout in the occupied valley. The Taliban say Beijing has invited them to attend a fresh round of intra-Afghan peace talks in China next week. Taliban spokesman Sohail Shaheen said Beijing's Afghanistan envoy Deng Shijun extended the invitation in a meeting with group leaders. Shaheen said a delegation led by Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar met with Shijun. He said the talks are planned for October 28th and 29th. Meanwhile, President Ashraf Ghani says he wants to start peace talks with the Taliban. In an interview, Ghani said these negotiations will be his top agenda if last month's election results declare his victory. Turkey says there is no need for a new operation in northeastern Syria at this stage. In a statement, the Defense Ministry said it will continue to monitor the situation at its bordering region with Syria. The statement came after the U.S. confirmed the withdrawal of Kurdish forces from Ankara's proposed safe zone in Syria. In a phone call, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo told Turkey's Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu that the border area has been cleared. President Donald Trump also said good news seems to be coming with respect to Turkey, Syria, and the Middle East. Earlier, Turkey and Russia reached a deal on a safe zone in Syria. The two sides agreed on joint patrols and a mechanism for the repatriation of Syrian refugees. Now, the top U.S. diplomat in Ukraine, William Taylor, has endorsed Congress's impeachment accusation against President Donald Trump. In his testimony, Taylor said President Trump linked U.S. aid to Kiev to an investigation into former Vice President Joe Biden's son. In his 15-page opening statement, Taylor said Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky came under sustained pressure. The envoy said he discovered the Trump administration's irregular, informal channel of U.S. policymaking in Kiev. Taylor said he sensed something odd, which threatened to undermine ties between both countries. The White House has said this testimony is part of a smear campaign from the far left of the Democratic Party. Earlier, President Trump had branded the Democratic impeachment process a lynching, even before this new witness. In other news, British lawmakers have rejected their government's proposed timetable for passing legislation to ratify the Brexit deal. The move leaves Prime Minister Boris Johnson's vow to leave the EU by the end of the month in doubt.
Lawmakers voted by 322 to 308 against the program motion. Under this motion, the government proposed to pass the legislation quickly. Many lawmakers said it did not give them enough time to scrutinize such an important bill. Prime Minister Boris Johnson said the UK will leave the bloc with his deal one way or the other. Opposition Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn said his party is ready to work with the government on a reasonable timetable. In an earlier vote, Johnson won approval for his Brexit legislation in a second reading. Lawmakers voted 329 versus 299 in favor of the Brexit legislation. Now, Prime Minister Boris Johnson will push for a general election if the EU proposes proposes to delay Brexit until January 31st. The rejection has dealt a major blow to the UK Prime Minister's wish to deliver Brexit by the October deadline.
This House has just given its assent. And I thank
Well, Israeli forces have arrested 14 Palestinians from various parts of the West Bank. In a statement, the Palestine Prisoners Society said Israeli police rounded up 8 Palestinians from East Jerusalem. 4 others were detained during multiple military raids across the southern West Bank district of Bethlehem. Meanwhile, Israeli forces also conducted raids in Ramallah city. Nearly 6,000 Palestinians, including women and children, are currently languishing in Israeli jails. On to Lebanon, where anti-government protesters have continued demonstrations on this 6th day of protests. Hundreds of thousands of people have flooded the streets, putting pressure on the government to enact long-promised economic reforms.
Protesters, furious at the political class for pushing the economy to the point of collapse, chant for revolution. The call for a strike has come despite the reforms by Prime Minister Saad al-Hariri and the resignation of government ministers. Banks are still closed amid uncertainty over how al-Hariri plans to ease an economic crisis and has ignited national protests.
He should be ashamed of himself and he should leave. It is embarrassing that until now we are still asking for electricity and water in schools and the least for our human rights.
Anti-government protests may have paralyzed the country, but one group of protesters took some time out to sing Baby Shark to soothe a toddler in a car. His mother said the toddler was surprised and starts laughing whenever he watches the video.
An Iraqi government committee investigating a wave of unrest earlier this month there has said 149 people were killed by security forces. The committee said security forces used excessive force and live fire to quell protests. The committee's report said 70% of the deaths were caused by shots to the head or chest. It held senior commanders responsible for these deaths, but stopped short of blaming Iraq's prime minister and other top officials. Protests over high unemployment rates, poor public services, and corruption erupted on the 1st of October, prompting a violent security crackdown. Prime Minister Adel Abdul Mahdi formed the committee to look into the bloodshed. He's also promised a cabinet reshuffle and reforms to fight corruption. Mosul was once considered the Middle East's prominent manufacturing hub. This all ended when the city was captured by ISIS in 2014. Now, 2 years after the Iraqi city was liberated from the terror outfit, the city is trying to recover its former glory.
Isolated and unproductive, the state of Mosul in Iraq today is a far cry of the city's industrial golden age. When ISIS overran the city, its factories were destroyed and their equipment was sold or repurposed into weapons. Business owners have slowly returned, but find a city with no reliable electricity and few distribution channels.
Before, everything was easy for us and nobody stopped anyone who was transporting goods in trucks, except for security procedures only. However, now it's different. You would need documents to enter. They wouldn't allow everyone to pass, and there are a lot of obstacles.
The city's old trade routes are now dotted with checkpoints collecting informal customs fees. This includes roads leading into Iraq's autonomous Kurdish region and to the country's capital, Baghdad.
Before 2014, we were exporting large quantities to the rest of the provinces, such as Baghdad, Basra, Najaf, and Amara. All the provinces were a unit, meaning we would trade by exchanging produced goods with material and vice versa.
Local businesses also have a hard time competing because the city is flooded with cheap imports. There's already fierce competition in Iraq over next year's budget, making it unclear if Mosul's ambitions for a commercial comeback will materialize.
Thousands of Syrian Kurds are trying to flee across the border into Iraq, but most are now stuck in a border town, struggling to find adequate support and resources. Find out about them in this report.
According to the UN, thousands are affected by the offensive, but only around 176,000 Syrian Kurds have made it to Iraq. The figure also includes some 80,000 children, who now face their future in bleak makeshift settlements. The rest are still stuck mostly in Kurdish-run Syrian towns like Hasaka.
Our houses are still destroyed. People are still displaced. People don't have money, so many people left for other countries.
Some live in a back classroom around 80 kilometers away from their hometown Ras Al-Ain, stuck in another town in northeastern Syria. This town is run by Kurdish officials autonomously for years, scrambling to cope with an influx of displaced people. These refugees are skeptical about the future of northeastern region because of distrust with the leaders.
The ceasefire is a mere game. The scheme is more than this. It targets all Syria, especially the Kurdish province of Al Jazeera. We're not optimistic. The international powers have concealed things at the expense of people. And this is obvious to the Syrian people who will pay the price.
Turkey launched its Operation Peace Spring against Syrian Kurds after President Donald Trump announced withdrawal of troops from the region. However, a deal has now been struck between Turkey and Russia, which allows both countries to conduct joint patrols on the border.
Time now for a break. I'll be back, though, after that with plenty more news. Stay tuned. Let's begin this segment of the Bulletin in Chile, where protests throughout that country have left 15 people dead and has led to the arrest of over 2,000 people. Thousands of people poured out onto the streets of Santiago's central squares to protest high living costs and inequality. Chile's center-right president, Sebastián Piñera, has said he will meet opposition leaders to discuss a new social contract. 10 Chilean cities are in a state of emergency, with evening lockdowns being enforced since riots broke out last Friday. The United Nations has called for an independent investigation after several deaths occurred in riots over the weekend. Well, Greece has moved hundreds of asylum seekers to the mainland from an island on its coast. The decision was made to cope with the problem of crowded migrant camps. Officials say about 700 migrants and refugees have arrived at Elefsina port near Athens from Samos Island. The Samos migrant camp was built for 650 people, but actually houses more than 5,700. These migrants will be settled in camps on the mainland. In Brazil, with the intention of breaking the Guinness record, a team of graffiti artists in Sao Paulo has painted a 10,000 square meter big mural. The colorful work of Urban Aquarium covers 15 tall buildings right in the center of the city.
What is a better way to brighten your day than to see fantastic squids, jellyfish on the side of a city scraper? This massive graffiti-style urban aquarium is adding fun and colors to the dull days of passers-by in Sao Paulo. A giant octopus submerged in bright colors alone covers one of the 15 interconnected dyed buildings. Brazilian graffiti artist Felipe Young and his team intend to turn the urban aquarium into the world's biggest piece of urban art.
It is a painting of more than 10,000 square meters on interconnected buildings forming complex work, which is immersive. It's a privileged location in the center of Sao Paulo.
Flip said his words aim to raise awareness on environmental and urban issues.
The size of the project brings with it the importance of preserving bodies of water. Aside from bringing color and life to the center of Sao Paulo, which is made of concrete, steel, and ash that is tiring in people's day-to-day lives.
The amazing art has been created in partnership with the city's cultural council.
Now in Malta, people of Gozo Island have celebrated the International Kites Festival in the village of Gharb. Streets have been covered by 2,000 colorful kites, making the village look festive. More in this report.
Hundreds of brightly colored kites fluttered in the breeze as Malta held the second International Kite Festival. Kites depicting popular cartoon characters filled the clear blue sky for a 3-day festival since October 18. The event featured competitions for international teams of kite masters, workshops for the best handmade kites, and art with deep roots in Gozo were also arranged. Festival organizers said kites have a fascinating history across global cultures. In Malta, kites have been used to send messages during wars in the past. They have also been used as royal sports or to measure distances. The festival was organized by Gharb Local Council.
Julian's Auctions will hold its Icons and Idols Rock and Roll auction in New York on Friday and Saturday. Items belonging to legendary musicians Kurt Cobain, Michael Jackson, and Elvis Presley will hit the auction block.
A sweater worn by Kurt Cobain during Nirvana's appearance on MTV Unplugged in 1993 is expected to fetch up to $300,000. A leather glove of Michael Jackson wore during the Jackson's Triumph Tour in 1981 is expected to go for up to $200,000.
This auction, we have over 700 lots, and some of the top pieces are, we have Kurt Cobain's guitar that he played on the In Utero tour in 1993. We estimate it $300,000 to $500,000. What's great about the guitar is it comes with a letter from Courtney Love saying that it was Kurt's favorite guitar.
A mustard yellow velvet jacket worn by Elvis Presley in the film Girl Happy will also be auctioned. Even 25 years after Cobain's death, his band Nirvana still has a strong following.
Even though Kurt Cobain died, 27 years old, over 25 years ago, I mean, there's still a fascination with him and his music, and he's constantly getting a new fan base. His Nirvana music, it's played all over the world, and there's become a surge in his collectability of his items.
The auction begins Friday morning at the Hard Rock Cafe in Manhattan. Bidders can also participate online.
Stock markets across Asia are trading lower after the fate of Brexit has plunged into uncertainty. Tracking overnight losses on Wall Street, leading indices in Shanghai and Seoul are down a fraction. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index has lost nearly 1%. Tokyo's Nikkei 225 Index is trading flat. International oil prices have fallen by more than 0.5% after a bigger than expected buildup of U.S. inventories last week. Time now to find out what the weather is like around the world. And there you have it. You're all caught up. Thank you for watching this bulletin here at UTC.